You're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sophia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Before we start today, please take a moment to rate this podcast. I cannot believe how many of you have gone and done this. I didn't really think many people would bite, but we're up to 43 ratings on Spotify, and that is just the biggest honor ever. Sitting pretty at 5 stars. If you guys just have a second to go do that, it takes, I think, a total of 8 to 10 seconds, depending on how speedy you are. But wherever you're listening today, please take a moment to give that honest feedback. It helps us get on the charts. This episode is sponsored by Big Tech's Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. Today we have Uncle Zoe on the podcast. This one's exciting because I actually got to meet him. I don't always get to meet my guest speakers, but I got to meet him at the Rangemaster Instructor Development course. I always try to say the full name. In Texas, Lincoln, Texas. And this was by Tom Givens. It was an honor to train under him, and Zoe was so helpful. I had so many gear malfunctions. So we became besties on the range, and I asked him to come on the podcast. So Zoe, I'm so happy you are here today. I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, I'm always terrible at introducing myself, but
Take your time.
I'm Uncle Zoe. I guess where to begin? Well, as you mentioned, I'm an assistant instructor at KR Training, the facility that hosted Tom for the Rangemaster IDC. Sorry, that's Instructor Development course. I'm going to call it IDC because that's just less of a mouthful. I've also been an assistant instructor, obviously, for Tom Givens because I was there assisting him for that particular class. When I'm not out at KR Training or assisting Carl and Tom, I'm also a personal coach to help other people who are looking to get into firearms, whether they're bringing them home into their home for the first time, or they're looking to get started with concealed carry, or they're thinking about home defense. To help kind of coach them through that process and getting them from zero to at least walking safely and going from there. And then if they want to start running with it, I will help them get into competition as well and other activities as they want. However, it didn't really start for me there. That's just what I'm doing now and where I spend most of my time. It really started as just being a person who got into guns late in life. I saw it from the eyes of a father and a husband who always had every intention and took every step that I could to protect my family and to provide for them and just to be there for them. And then one day it just kind of clicked and I bought a gun and then started going down that path. And it was a path that was, I didn't make any huge mistakes that ended up in serious injury or legal trouble or anything like that. But most of them were financial mistakes and just not knowing what I didn't know. And I spent years, perched at the peak of Mount Stupid, which is a reference to the Dunning-Kruger effect, meaning I just didn't know what I didn't know, right? I was unconsciously incompetent, so I didn't know that I was dumb. No, I just didn't know what I didn't know. But as soon as I started taking some classes and learning, I was like, oh, wow, there's actually a lot to this. There is more to learn, and I'm just going to start sharing my journey. And I decided to start a blog called unclezoe.com, and I just started writing about everything that I was doing. So in there, some of the early stories are about why I decided to become a gun owner, what it was like the first time that I went hunting, what it was like when I took my first match, what it was like when I attended my first class. Probably the first year was a bunch of me trying to figure out what the best caliber was and was a participant in the caliber wars, and basically everything that I think anybody who, maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but I think a lot of people kind of go through that process where they buy their gun, they get their concealed carry permit, they think they're done. And then they realize that they don't, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate the choices that are in front of them, which are plentiful, and a lot of them are honestly quite terrible and just a waste of money. And so that's it. I just want to help people through that process.
Absolutely. And that is the energy I got from you when I met you. So that was a lot of fun. That class in particular was stressful. to say the least.
It's
And maybe I'm
intense.
projecting here. Yeah, it's intense. That's a really good way to put
Yeah.
that. You know, before that, my only reference for instructor certification training is the NRA class I took, and I won't even go into that because then I'll really be projecting. But I was very excited to attend such a highly esteemed course, and your presence there made that process of navigating that stress and like being able to ask questions so much easier. So thank you so much for that. It definitely left an impression with me. Um, for those of you wanting to train with Zoe, where can they find you?
Um, just my blog is the best place to start, right? UncleZo.com. So Uncle, how do you spell that? Uncle. I usuzy have to write it out to think about it because Uncle's one of those words that I can actually mess up quite frequently. But
No, it's okay. Yes.
UNCLEZO.com. On there, you'll find links to all of the social media platforms that I'm active on. So you can contact me through any of those places. And there is a little shop menu, and under that, there's firearms training services. And you can find links as far as to find out what I charge for private lessons, whether they're virtual or in person. And I've recently started offering some packages that are really private lessons that could be for an individual, a couple, or a family. Um, but those would be the places to get in contact with me. And at the very bottom of every page, there's always a little contact Zoe link that'll take you to a form that you can fill out, and it'll just send an email straight to me. So any of those methods are good ways to contact me and get started.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. Everything today will be linked in the show notes, which are the notes below the podcast as well. So if you'd like to kind of look around and see Zoe's impressive blog, you can do that while we are recording today. Kind of look around and maybe you'll um, flag or save a few articles that you want to look into following this podcast episode, which hopefully you'll be back on for more segments because there's
I hope
just
so too.
so much here to go into. Today in particular, though, we were talking before the episode, and I'm not talking about the hour we FaceTime because Sophia was having camera issues. Sorry about that. But we talked before this episode about instructor development, about people getting into the space, how the amount of instructors available nowadays are limited, and also the quality training is limited. I would love
Yeah.
to hear your perspective on that from your experiences.
Oh, yeah, I don't even know where to begin with that question.
Right? It's loaded.
It is. It's very, very loaded.
Locked and loaded.
I mean, let's back it up a second. We mentioned that
Do it.
the Rangemaster IDC class was very intense, right? And I think it's probably
Yes.
a good place to just maybe explain why that is.
Let's hear it.
And I'm going to tell it with a story because I'm good at telling stories. That's why my blog is what it is filled with stories. But so when I decided to get my first instructor certification, which for the only instructor certification that I went after was the Rangemaster one. I don't have an NRI instructor certification. I don't have USCCA. I'm not a licensed to carry instructor in the state of Texas. I am just a Rangemaster certified instructor. But the reason that I took that is I started kind of connecting the dots that the instructors that I had trained with, who I learned the most from and I got the most out of, from learning how to shoot and having better mindset and doing force on force training and everything that really kind of goes around being a better self defender, I guess is the way that I would phrase that, because it is a interdisciplinary undertaken to really be a self defender. It's not just about shooting. It's not just about having a gun. But all the instructors that really had an impact on my life all were Rangemaster certified. And I was like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. But I still had no desire to really to become one until I got my first email from a reader telling me that they were putting into practice something that they had learned on my blog. And that's when it kind of dawned on me. And to be completely honest, my first instinct was selfish, was going, oh my, what kind of liability am I creating for myself? And then the next one that really kind of hit home hard, especially once I decided to go ahead and do the Rangemaster IDC, which was, again, to try to limit any liability that I might be creating, but also to realize that, hey, I'm actually teaching people. I probably should get better at teaching people. Is I went and took Tom's Rangemaster IDC. And when I sat down, one of the first things that he kind of points in day one of that class is the level of responsibility that we have as self-defense instructors or armed self-defense instructors, defensive pistol instructors, whatever word you want to use to describe us. We are teaching people how to be ready and prepared and equipped to deal with the worst situation they will ever face in their lives. Hopefully they'll never have to, but it happens far more frequently than people realize. And that's a huge undertaking because, and I'm going to borrow from Tom here because I love the way that he put it, right? Is if you're interested in golf and you go get golf lessons and you have a bad golf coach, the worst thing that happens to you is you wasted some of your money and then you play a bad golf game. If you do that with somebody who's teaching you how to defend your life and you need to defend your life and he was no good and you're not equipped for it, well, hopefully you won't end up hurt, dead, or in jail. And those are pretty serious life altering things that can happen in a self-defense incident. So that weighed very, very, very heavy on my shoulders, and everything we did in that class and what we covered in that class was really to kind of sink that and drive that home because it's a huge thing, right? So I don't remember what the question was now, but
Just what you've observed as far as
yeah,
the limitations on both people just feeling like they can get into instruction, the imposter
yeah.
syndrome that we kind of discussed a little bit about.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell I'm gonna go back in that story and tell a sub story in within
Please.
that story, right?
I'm loving this.
When I decided that, you know what, I got that email, I should go ahead and try to limit my liability and become a better instructor. I went to one of my mentors over at KR Training, John Dobb, and I told him, I was like, hey, I noticed all you guys are range master certified instructors. I did a little bit of research to see what the shooting test was like and what the class looked like and what kind of tests were there. And I didn't think that I was ready for it. And so I asked John, I was like, hey, man, do you think I could pass this class if I took it? And he's like, Zoe, just shut up and go take the class. And I was like, so he believed in me that I was ready for it and that would make a good instructor when I didn't. I wasn't sure I was ready. I was trying to figure out what to do. And thankfully, I had a great support system because I told him, I was like, okay, I went ahead and signed up for it, but I'm still not sure I can pass the test. He's like, okay, let's go shoot it. And so he helped me and kind of coached me through that whole process. But coming out of that on day one, again, the very, 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 very first thing that you do when you get to the IDC is you have to introduce yourself to the rest of the class, right? And so you've got, I can't remember how many folks we had in my class, but it was at least, I don't know, 18 people we had there, maybe 20. And I was the last one to have to do my introduction. And ahead of me were these people who had all sorts of credentials. They had been an NRA instructor for years. They had this and this certification. They were the lead instructor in such and such police department, or were involved in some sort of other agency, or they were accomplished competitive shooters. And then it comes my turn to introduce myself. And again, that's where I felt the imposter syndrome kind of going, I don't belong here. And I'm like, hi, I'm Zoe. I have a blog. And I just sat back down. And that happens all the time where, as I've gotten into it and I've started coaching people, yeah, it's really when my mentors have asked me to do something for them or kind of start filling in their shoes. Like, hey, like I remember the first time that Carl, I was assisting for him, and he just handed me the time clock and said, "Okay, take over the line." And I was like, "Ooh, oh,
Yes.
okay,
Been there.
yes, sir." Uh, and again, you kind of feel like you're not ready for that, or that
Yes.
it, part of me is going, "Okay, I just got to fake it till I make it." But the reality is that we do have those skills, but the trying to change that self image to really accept the fact that you are an instructor, that you're taking on that responsibility, that you have that accountability, and that these people can rely on you is a huge thing. And it takes some time to kind of get your mind around that. Which actually,
Absolutely.
another great book that I recently reread that I've been using to help me get my head around that, because again, that imposter syndrome has been a huge thing for me. But with Winning in Mind by Lanny Basham.
Yes.
And I've written out my statements. I'm reading them every day. It's like, I am a firearms instructor. I've got my pay value, or what is it? The pay value written out, and I read it to
Yes.
myself every day. And I'm
Uh,
getting, just trying to accept the fact and see myself in that light, because I am helping people. You just said, hey,
yes.
you were awesome that day. We had so many problems and you're out there helping me. I am an assistant instructor. That's exactly what I meant to do. And I accomplished that, and you're happy about it. So I'm happy about it.
Yes.
It's a cool thing.
Absolutely. You just made me flash back to the A Girl and a Gun National Conference. Riley had me run the line with my with the shot timer. And he was like, "You've done this before, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." And then I got up there and I was like, "Shit. Like,
What do I do?
what's the first thing you say? Like,
Yeah.
shooter ready, I think. I don't know. Anyway, so ran that line. And of course, these women, like a lot of them were either super new to competing or getting into competition. So I'm like, great, this is like one of their first impressions. So I
Right.
had that moment. And it always just takes someone believing in you like that. So sounds like we have some pretty good mentors around us, which is
Yes.
really nice. And we touched on that too, that this industry is just so helpful. I know when I told you this before, like when I got into it, I was like, is it because I'm a female that people are wanting to just like mentor me and white knight? But the more I've gotten into the industry and the more I've met people and learned about dynamics other than my own, I've just learned that it's just this culture. Of course,
Hmm.
we have our exceptions, but
Hmm.
it's been an overall very positive experience. So,
That's pretty much been my experience as a whole. 80% solid people willing to help. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a match and um, something's gone wrong, something's not quite right. I've got trouble with my equipment, and everybody's just jumping on. Okay, let's get you fixed. Let's get it going. Let's figure out how to get you through this. Or even when I first started shooting local USPSA matches, we had a couple of grandmasters that are in the local club, masterclass shooters, and I was like, man, I have no idea how to approach a stage. I'm like, okay, well, let me walk you through my stage plan. Here you go, try this.
mm,
Where I've seen you shoot, I would do this a little bit different if I was you, based on your skill set and where you're at. Because they even start noticing the difference. They're like, you, Zoe, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a rather rotund fella. So my superpower is inertia. So you got these
ooh,
guys who
yes.
just run and zip around stages and get all these close shots and everything. And they're like, yeah, you know what? You're actually much better than most of us from a distance. And I'm like, yeah, I practice that because I can't run like you guys. So I'm going to cut the time by sending the bullet further because that bullet will get there before I do. So they'll take that into consideration and then help me adjust my stage plan to cater to my abilities. And I mean, the list can go on. It's everybody. I won't say everybody. Most people are willing to help you. The only thing you have to do is one, really, not just multiple things. The only thing you have to do is ask for help genuinely. And that's a very subtle distinction I put on the end, but I think that's what's important is if you ask for help, but you're kind of like, don't really seem like you have your heart in really getting better, then people pick up on that. And to be fair, they don't want to waste their time on it. And they won't be rude about it, but you'll get a different type of help. It'll be a quick answer, a quick shrug of the shoulders and figure it out, go on.
Absolutely. To further your point about wanting to motivate others interested in instruction and just mentorship in general, what would you say some first steps are to getting into that? Should they just immediately dive into an instructional course or should they start mentoring friends and family? What do you think?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would say is become competent in the craft that you want to teach others with. And I'm not telling you to, again, we relate this to shooting a lot because when we talk about armed self-defense, we tend to think guns first, but guns are a part of it. And you should know how to safely operate a pistol and how to competently shoot it. Now, you don't have to be a USPSA Grandmaster or an IDPA Masterclass shooter or a national champion or anything like that, but you should at least know how to put hits on target in a reasonable amount of time. You don't necessarily need to be able to be a marathon runner. Obviously, I'm not, but you should at least know a little bit about movement. Have a little bit of competence, and it also goes further into defining what it is that you want to mentor others and coach them in. Right. So I mentioned that if people ask me for help getting into competition shooting, I'll be happy to point them in that direction and to help them with their maybe their initial equipment selection, helping them go from brand new shooter, unclassified shooter to getting their first classification. But the minute that they're there, I'm done because they're now reaching the limit of my capabilities of what I'm able to do as a competitive shooter. So I want to make sure that I send them off to somebody else who can, right? But so it's get that level of competence, know what you know, be somewhat aware of what you don't, and know where those boundaries are so that you don't do them a disservice either. once you kind of have achieved that level of competence and you kind of know a little bit about yourself, what you're capable of and what your limitations are, then at that point, it's just start helping other people, right? When you're no longer the new guy at the local match and the new guy comes up and he has a question, help him out. If it's a friend or a family member who says, "Hey, I want to buy my first gun," cool. Let's go look at it and go through the same process of, okay, what's it for? That's there's different guns for different things, and you want to make sure you pick the right tool for the right job. And so help them through that selection process. Steer them away from making a bad decision. Protect them from the person behind the gun counter that's likely to suggest a very bad suggestion. And I know we talk about this one for sure when a lady goes to the gun counter and it's even happened to my wife a number of times where she goes in, she starts looking at guns, and the guy behind the gun counter is like, "Oh, you should be looking at these little tiny J-frame revolvers." And she's looking, I'm like, "Nah, I got three of those and they suck. I'm looking at this over here because this is what I
Hmm.
want." But again, my wife now knows what she likes. When we first started, we didn't. And so you're going to get lots of suggestions from different people who mean well, but they don't necessarily know enough to guide you in a competent fashion, right? So once you have that level of
Yes.
competence, go help people, go help them with those things, and then go from there. Then if from there, if you want to become an instructor, yeah, go for it, right? And I don't even know that you need to be a mentor first, right? I think you'll probably know when you're ready to make that change. And I would encourage you that if you are a person who has those skills that other people can benefit from, consider becoming one. We definitely need more people out there spreading the good word and helping others um, start and continue on their journeys.
Absolutely. I had so many little memories flash when you were giving this uh, kind of step goal. What am I trying to say? All these steps to becoming an
Yeah.
instructor, just even a mentor. I definitely wish I when it comes to the actual course material, this is something as far as sharing my personal experience. Um, I adapted my course material from like three different instructors that I shadowed. I would throw that in there as a step if you're listening
Oh
and
yeah.
you're like, oh wow, like that's too quick for me. Go ahead and shadow people. I think because of my pre-med background, shadowing several physicians, and then by several I mean upwards of 15 different physicians and varying specialties to see if it's really what I wanted to do. I ended up still, dropping out of medical school, but it still gave me insight to what the day to day would look like. But for this particular purpose with firearms instruction, seeing various curriculums and then seeing
Hmm.
how the students are able to absorb it all and also seeing how they balance like class material with shooting material, that's something
Yeah.
that I'm still kind of refining. So Tom's course was amazing for that.
It is. There's a lot of good coursework for it, and I kind of glossed over it. And I think before we started recording, I kind of mentioned it. I'm definitely blessed to be near KR training and to be there as an assistant instructor because Carl Wren, I mentioned John Dobb, Tracy, Greg, Doug. I mean, I could name all the guys on there. They've all been part of my process as well, and they've worked as mentors. But one of the biggest things for me, and I don't know, coming out of the Range Master IDC with my certificate, I was like, cool, I got a certificate. What now? Right? I don't even know where to begin. And I think for like probably the first year after having that certificate, I was like, okay, I was coaching a person here or there, starting to put a couple lesson plans together, trying to figure it out. But I got a call from Carl, I'm the owner of KR Training, one day, and he was like, "Hey, I'm running a class this weekend. And I could use an extra set of hands. Would you want to come out here and put those instructor credentials for help or to use and help me out?" And I was like, "Yeah, that would be great." Um, and that for me was actually another part of the process where I think if you really want to become a better instructor or become a successful instructor, find folks like that to get mentored by, right? Offer to help them out as an assistant instructor. Same thing, when Tom was coming back into the area and I knew that he was going to be here, he lives in Florida and he travels all through the country. So I'm not going to be able to follow him around and be his AI at everywhere that he goes. But when he was coming into my area, I was like, "Hey, Tom, I see you're coming in. Do you need any extra hands?" I'm happy to come AI for you, right? And so I got that opportunity, and that gives you the chance to kind of shadow people, to see how the sausage is made, to see how they organize their class, how they run things. You get insights in other areas where you just won't as a student. So, for example, in that IDC class, you were there, you got the student experience, you got to see the material, you got the workbook, you got the drills, you got to keep the ammo in your pocket and keep stuff in your mags while you're in
Mhm.
between relays, because there is no rest for the wicked. You just got to keep going.
Yes.
Um, and while you were doing that, I'm over going, making sure that, the cooler has water. I see how Tom has organized his targets so that we're ready to put them up when we're in between relays so that we can keep the class running smoothly. We got to see how he did lane assignments and those kinds of things. And you get a different view into that whole experience that I think can help you become a better assistant or an instructor, depending on and they both go hand in hand. It's all of those roles are necessary to be able to effectively deliver information and training to the students in one of those classes. So, yeah, absolutely. If you have a chance to mentor or shadow people, do it. If it's somebody who you admire and you're starting as an instructor and you've taken their class and they're coming back in your area, I'd say don't hesitate. Reach out to them. Say, hey, remember me? I took your class. I'm also a local instructor. I'd like to help. What can I do? Now, fair warning, this might be volunteer work. Most
Yes.
interns don't get paid, but, and if they do, it's not very well. That's for sure. Um, so yeah, go and volunteer a little bit, and the payment there is getting some insights into how to do it better.
Are you ready to step up your shooting game? Introducing Walkers Incorporated, the pioneers in ear protection for shooting, hunting, and commercial applications. For over 25 years, Walkers has been revolutionizing the industry, ensuring your hearing safety and enhancing your shooting experience. Anytime I'm on the range, indoor or outdoor, I use Walkers ear protection to have crystal clear communication with my fellow shooters. I currently use the Silencer 2.0s and the Razor Slims for my range adventures. Not only does Walkers protect your hearing, but they also protect you. Being able to communicate with others on the range is vital to personal safety. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your safety when the ultimate goal is for overall better self-protection. With Walkers, you'll experience unparalleled comfort, unmatched innovation, and the industry standard in shooting ear protection. Never settle for anything less when it comes to your safety and enjoyment on the range. You can save on Walker's ear protection and support the podcast by using code SHESHIELD. That's SHESHIELD at checkout. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, it is work. I remember when I had AI'd for Riley, I tried to stay busy the entire time. And then when I wasn't busy, I would hop up on a table and sit and rest my feet for a moment. And I could tell he was really appreciative of that help so that he could focus on the actual instruction part. It's a lot to manage a class like that, especially with really any size over like 6 to 8, depending on your experience and your comfort
Yep.
level. So I I got a lot of value from that class, and I'm actually at the point where and I hope this conversation, me sharing my story, you sharing yours, is helping some people see like the almost like the spectrum of teaching and all like the little side quests that you go on to,
Oh yeah.
to find your final place. But I've recently been trying to find my balance between teaching the basics, like what do I teach someone in that 3.5 hour course I host here in Arkansas, in Northwest Arkansas. Uh, Tom was very focused on defense. I mean,
Yep.
seriously, since that class, I haven't left my house a single time without my gun because I'm just like, he brought the seriousness to us and also bringing awareness to the dependency that we have on
Yeah.
911 and the timing. So, how would you kind of frame that for someone maybe hearing this for the first time or someone who wants to instruct that part, the severity of it all?
Well, I think you really have to. Well, in full transparency, I'm still figuring that out myself. As I'm starting to kind of package together my course material I'm planning on. There's
Yeah.
a couple things that we have to do. I mean, I wish I could get everybody for 2 days, because I think 2 days is the Goldilocks amount of time that you need. When I say 2 days, 4 4 hour blocks is what I want people to kind of take them through that whole ordeal. It's really what's necessary because you have to learn and you have to teach them one, how to use that thing safely. Ideally, when somebody's coming to take a class for self-defense, it's not the first time that they're handling a gun, so you don't have to necessarily go really, really deep into this is the business end. Only point it where business is needed and nowhere else. And your finger stays off the trigger and in register, unless it's actually one of the things that I use and when I'm coaching them is triggers at home. It's at home and register. If it needs to go to work, then it goes to the trigger and gets to work. But otherwise, it's back at home. But anyway, so there's that aspect of it. And you do have to cover it to some extent when you do that because you don't know what level of proficiency with just safe operation your student has when they come to you. So you have to do some of it and you have to give it enough time to make sure you cover your student base. The other part that you get into in those 4 blocks is the competent shooting of a firearm, right? So being able to get the gun safely and quickly out of the holster, present it to the target, and start getting hits on target in the shortest amount of time possible because time is a valuable, very, very valuable commodity, and you just don't have a lot of it in a self-defense incident. And then another part that we have to really drill home, and I think this is where we get into the seriousness of it, is that the typical person like you and me, and I'd actually say that we're probably atypical because we've done this level of training. But if I talk to anybody who really hasn't thought about what it is, what it actually means to defend yourself, the definition is you are in a position where the only answer is to apply violence to another person rapidly so that they stop applying violence to you. That is the only answer. And through our call it our social conditioning or upbringing and whatnot, we've built these walls that we have a natural reluctance to be violent to anybody, right? It's the idea of me just walking around down the street and randomly punching a person. It's like, no, this is never going to happen. But in that life and death scenario, I might need to put holes into a person's high thoracic cavity very, very quickly. And that is about the most lethal type of violence that I can apply to somebody. And I need to make that decision in a split instant and do that. So I've got to remove all of the mental blocks that I have on that. So in Tom's class, the thing that he tells you is, okay, well, start by when you put your gun on, tell yourself out loud why it is you're putting that gun on. And in what he uses in class is to say, well, I'm putting this gun on because today might be the day that I have to shoot somebody. There is no sugarcoating it. There is no, because I've heard all kinds of euphemisms for it. I think euphemism is the right word for it. But, some people say, well, it's better to have and not need than to need and not have. Okay, that's true. But for what specifically? Let's be specific about this, right? And so that's the first step on saying I'm starting to take the first mental safety off in case I have to use it because today might be the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can tie it to the what's the color codes, Cooper's color codes, right? We have kind of color codes, conditions. I'm getting some of the terminology wrong here, and if Tom hears this, he's going to get mad at me because words mean something, and I should have the right terminology. But essentially, we've got a certain
Color
number of
code.
mental conditions. Yeah, color codes, mental conditions that we go through, right? We have white, which is where unaware and at rest. This is when you're at home, you got your headphones on, you don't know what's going on around you. We're in a safe location where that's an acceptable level of awareness to have, which is no awareness of anything that's happening around us. Usually because we've got other things in place that would raise some sort of alarm to bring us into a more awareful state than where we're at there. So when we're putting on that gun, getting ready to go outside, we're immediately going into condition yellow, right? We are now, because we might have to use this thing, we should probably pay attention to what's going on around us in case something needs to be shot. So safety is one safety is released, and we're now in that mental mode. From there, you're kind of paying attention to your world, and again, there's something that we got to teach them in class. Is the next thing is going to be there's something that's out of place, right? It could be your spidey sense. It could be something that's just out of place. Like for example, there is couple guys that are, using guys generally here, but two or three people who are hanging out with their backs against the wall of a local gas station, and they have been there for quite a long time, and they seem very keen on paying attention to the cars that are arriving, the people that are getting out, that are going into the store, when they're walking back out, and those kinds of things. That to me says, you know what? There's a potential that these people here are looking for an opportunity. So that might put me into what we call condition orange, which is, I should maintain awareness of what those folks are doing while I'm still being aware of what's going on around me in case something else draws my attention. But again, there's a mental block and something that we should be thinking there. It's like, oh, I might need to shoot them today. Now I'm more specific. I may need to shoot somebody today too. It may be them that need to get shot today. Right? And so we're relieving that mental block. And again, this is something we got to teach to people, but it's something you got to start practicing in your own life to start getting those additional safeties removed, your mental safeties removed so that you're ready to go. At some point, that level of awareness and doing that just also kind of helps. They will notice that you're aware of them, and so they probably won't select you. But if for some reason they miss that, and they do, then they may do something where they start moving towards you, where it's like, okay, now it's go time. So I'm going to start drawing my line in the sand of, if they do this, I will shoot you. Right, and so now I'm mentally ready to do that if that line gets crossed, and that's kind of going into condition red when it's okay. Fight is on. Do that, and and what that means is, I don't know, I might already have my hand on my gun in that holster ready position. Depending on what's there, I might be looking for biding my time for that serendipitous draw, or this is where all your different tactics come into play. But it's that mindset that got me prepared to start deploying those tactics. And the sooner that you do that, the more time that you have, the more options that you have. Like, maybe you see three people hanging out there, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to go to the next gas station. That's cool. I'm gone. Right? I've solved that problem without having to approach it.
Oh yeah.
But that is the probably the most important part of teaching somebody about self-defense, is to start getting their
Yeah.
head in the game. I've talked about this with my wife. We have a mechanism when we go shopping. We try to always go together as a couple. One, because it gives us a chance to hang out and catch up and insult each other vigorously, because that's what we do for fun. We're the kind of couple that wear the shirt that says "I'm with stupid," pointing at the other person.
Oh, I like that. That's
Uh,
good. That's awesome.
28 years, almost 29, will do that to you. So of
I
marriage will do
love
that
it.
to you.
Yeah, yeah,
But so our system is simple, right? It's in 9 times out of 10, because I am the person who always carries. My wife, unfortunately, does not practice with the same level of rigor that I do, and that's perfectly fine. That's her choice, and that's, you know, I may want something different from her, but unfortunately, she's got to make that decision for herself. So when we go as a couple,
right.
she will have the responsibility of paying attention to the aisles, doing the price comparisons, making the decisions of what goes into the cart, keeping track of the shopping list and everything else. My job is to push the cart and maintain awareness. And if for some reason I see something that's out of place, we have a little system where I will basically tug on her shirt 3 times, say, hey, it's time to go. And she puts whatever's down, and we just kind of get up and go. Right. And so we kind of have the system in place. And why did we do that? Well, when you're sitting here on your phone, looking at your shopping list, and you're looking at the item, and you're doing price comparisons and trying to happen here, your level of awareness is here. You're essentially in condition white, where
Mm.
you can't pay attention to everything else that's going on. So I stand back and I kind of maintain that condition yellow, if you will, as we go. So again, those are kind of just other things that you can start talking about in self-defense. Is how do you apply this um, when you're by yourself? How do you do it when you're a couple, when you're at home? Um, but yeah, that to me is probably the biggest thing, and the biggest responsibility that we have as defensive pistol trainers or self-defense trainers is to get our students to recognize that this is serious stuff, and your gun or your pepper spray or whatever tool you have is not just some magic talisman that's going to ward off evil. That's a quote that I stole from Masada Yub. I think it was in his book. I'll have to remember which one it was. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I love that. It's just not a magic talisman, right? It's not going to ward off evil. Evil's still going to be there. It's still going to be lurking. You need your tools and you need your wits about you to be able to effectively defend yourself.
I appreciate you taking the time to explain that. I know it was in the manual of Tom's book, but we didn't get a chance. Maybe I fell asleep or something, but I did not hear him go over it. So this amount of description is very helpful because I'm not gonna lie, this is the first time I've truly understood it. I've heard about it for a while, but
Yeah.
I've not done my due diligence. So I love
He
this.
goes
So
really
we
deep into it in his level 4
okay.
class. Um,
Oh, good deal. Okay, looking
but
forward to
but
that.
it is it is touched upon in the manual. There's a couple of other good books that get into that, but just
Okay.
I think I've got a blog post or two on it that I can point in your direction as well too.
Oh, please. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So, would you say that this is an appropriate scale to introduce your students to as an instructor, even if you haven't read the in-depth books, but just bring this up as a kind of almost force continuum, would you say? That's probably not the correct term for this, but
Yeah, I mean, force continuum is a little bit different. That's
mm-hmm,
we'd never want to apply more force than what we're met with because that leads us into legal situations. Like, oh, somebody's yelling at
absolutely.
me. They use bad words. I'm going to shoot them. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, so when we talked about the 4 blocks, right, that I would have for in that 2-day period, we said safety, basic, competent use of a pistol in a defensive use case. Mindset, I think that would be another. I don't know if it's a 4-hour block or not, but the last one is going to be the legal aspect of it, which is I think another important one, um, because those are anytime that it comes down to pulling out the gun and having to use it, you are justified in using lethal force. There's 2 risks that you have that are never zero, no matter how much training you have, no matter what the circumstances are. Is there is a chance that you will end up physically injured. So there's a physical risk. You could be seriously physically injured or killed. Um, and again, here's another mentality thing too. That we get into that. I would say that anybody who goes into a fist fight thinking they're not going to take a punch to be very foolish. And so I think anybody who goes into a gunfight thinking they're not going to catch a bullet is also very foolish, right? So then we get into the medical aspects and everything else. That's also another facet of being a prepared self-defender.
Yes.
Um, but then there's also the legal risk, which is if you did everything right,
Mm-hmm.
you come out unscathed. Did you do everything that you can to minimize your legal risk? And even if you did everything perfectly, if that self-defense incident caught bad optics from the public because it was caught on camera, and it usually does, and the local DA happens to be politically motivated, and they have delusions of grandeur of being the next governor and eventually the president of the United States for their political party, and they can make a big case out of this and it'll help them politically, man, they are going to try to crucify you with everything that you got. And so even if you win, the process is going to get you because you're going to spend lots and lots and lots of money into this. You're going to lose your job while you're waiting in jail for your trial. I mean, it's horrendous, right? So understanding that whole legal aspect and everything, there's another important part of it because it also helps feed back into the mindset of, oh, hey, I wanted to condition orange. Cool. Is there an exit? Yeah, there is. Let's go. Because now I've made that risk, both of those risks completely zero. That is the only way that I can guarantee that those risks are zero is not being in a fight. So that
Absolutely.
feeds into it. But those are, I think, the 4 things that if somebody says, yeah, I'm a defensive firearms trainer, you have to have those 4 things in your curriculum. Now, is that all in one class? I don't think so. It's a lot to cover. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I
yeah,
like I like your system, by the way. I Caleb and I have one, my husband. So I'm trying to think if I should share it. It's I don't know. Man, I'm really trying to think. Yeah, so our thing is if we're walking, because we just like to walk together. Sometimes
yeah,
we don't want to like go do a super heavy CrossFit workout, but we also don't want to like sit and watch a show. So we'll just go on a walk. Well, I don't know why I'm explaining why we go walking, but anyway, when I used to live like downtown Fayetteville, we would, the homeless population is fairly large, and you just never know what you're going to get. And our thing was if we felt like things were off, we'd say, "Hey, did you just see a fly?" And if he feels like it's safe, he'll be like, "Yeah, it was just a fly." if I feel or he feels like some dude is being sketchy, we'll be like, no, I think that was a wasp. Like the wasp
I like that.
just flew by. I
Yeah,
like it a lot because
yeah,
we're just so natural at it now. We'll be like, oh, was that a fly? And like he'll be like, no, I think that was a wasp. And we'll be like, oh, ooh, and then we'll walk away. And
yeah.
also, this is crazy. Are you ready for this? I meant to tell you this before we started, but I'm kind of glad I'm just telling you this on the podcast now. So the other day, I was driving into work. I have to go from Fayetteville to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Um, and I needed to FaceTime someone. And so I pulled off behind a Home 2 Suites, thinking like it would be a safer option than like a gas station. It was like less populated, and I don't know. I was just using my gut. So I parked behind there, and no shit, this guy, he looks like he's a teenager, but I'm very bad at determining age. I'll think a kid is 5 years old and it's 3 months. So I don't really know. But so this kid's walking by, this dude. He has I swear to God, I swear it was a Glock 19 with like a 32 round mag, whatever that like extended mag is that they sell,
Hmm.
just sticking out of his sweatpants. Um, he had a neon shirt on. It looked like he just came from like a construction job. Neon shirt, but this man was slowly walking by my car, like definitely some pre-assault cues, trying to like suss me out a little bit. And like I have a nicer car, so like I'm aware of the what goes along with that. And I'm the only person back there. He's looking around, he's looking back at my car, and I'm just sitting there like, oh shit. Like Tom, like I was just thinking back to the class, and I feel like because of the class I was kind of primed for
Yep.
like this type of situation. So I hit my gas and sped the hell off. And he watched me speed off. Like he almost turned around like crap, like, oh, she's gone. Um,
Well, I
but
think
I'm not
it's
gonna
one or
lie.
two thoughts. He either was like, crap, she's gone because you might have been selected and he just lost his meal ticket. Or two, it might have been, man, she's crazy. And that's okay. Both of those,
Yes,
both of those are fine. Like, what's wrong with her,
exactly.
right?
Right. Like, what's her deal? Like, this crazy bitch. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, you need to think whatever you need to think, but I needed to get out of there.
Yep.
And of course, I'm like thinking back to um, I'm thinking back to what he said about like 911 and like how we are our own first responders. And like I've heard that phrase my entire involvement in this community, like you are your own first responder.
Hmm.
I would love for you to speak on what that means to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh boy,
I
we're running
know.
out of time too, so I don't know how much we'll get
Yes,
into this, but
totally fair.
I won't get into the details because when I wrote my AAR on his IDC class, he has like, hey, don't get into the details of that one call that we listened to. You know which one I'm talking about.
Oh,
So
yes, of course I
I'll
do.
keep
I listened to
I'll
it.
be respectful of Tom's request here, not get into what were the contents and the details of that call. But there's a
Right.
lot that goes in that class that kind of makes you aware of. There is a large period of time that happens between the time that you dial 911 to the time that any sort of emergency services arrive. And when I say there's a long amount of time, you could live in the nicest part of town that doesn't have a defund the police thing going on, and they have an awesome response time, and they're there within 3 minutes. A lot can happen in 3 minutes. It's yeah. This is a very, 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 very difficult topic. So when somebody says, you need to be your own first responder, it's the reality is that you need to be able to keep yourself alive until that next level of emergency care arrives. Now, whether that's somebody with more guns, or whether that's somebody with better medical equipment, or whether that's somebody with a fire hose and a lot of water, you have to deal with that. I mean, if you sat there and there's a fire going in your kitchen and you dial 911 and they're like, yeah, no problem, we'll have a fire truck there in 2 minutes. Well, cool. Guess what? If you don't start putting that fire out now, in 2 minutes, your house is going to be ablaze, right? So you need to be able to take action, and you are your own first responder in that idea. And I think when you talk to most people, it's like saying, "Hey, would you just let a fire burn until the firemen arrive?" Most people are like, "No, that's dumb. Why would I do that? My house would burn down." Well, if somebody's trying to kill you, we'll just sit there and be like, "Hey, I've got the police on the phone, so we'll just wait for the police to arrive." No, they're probably going to be done killing you before the
Yes.
police arrive, right? It's the same type of thing. It's the same level of emergency that can escalate and end very, very, very quickly. Um, I don't know that he did it in this class, or I might have not been there for it, but in the class that I took with the IDC, we had a very large population of LEOs that were present in the class. And he pulled the whole class and he said, "Hey, all of you guys have been, you know, responded to calls at some point in your career." Yes, they all agreed. Or he was like, he had them all put their hands up and say, "Put your hands down if you were never in a patrol car and had to respond to calls." All the hands stayed up. And they said, "How any of you who actually got a call and you arrived in time to either stop what was being reported or while it was happening, keep your hands up." All the hands went down. Right. So, and he's like, yeah, on average, when he has a class that's mostly LEO, if he's lucky, he'll have one hand that stays up. Most of the time they come down. So it just kind of, puts it in perspective that these things do happen. They happen in a higher frequency that most people realize. Uh, the idea that it's not going to happen to you because it always happens to somebody else is a terrible idea to have in your head, because to everybody else, you are the somebody else. And you have to keep yourself alive and to protect those you care about until additional help arrives. And that could be a few minutes. It could be a few hours. In certain parts
Absolutely.
of the country now, it might actually be the next business day and it's Saturday
Hmm.
morning.
Can you explain that really quick? What did we talk about in class? It's
Yeah.
insane. And if you guys don't know about this, like, hold your butts, like, hold on to your butts, because
There are with the whole defund the police thing. I mean, there's a number of things. I've talked about this with a couple of friends that are LEOs, right? You've got the political. Best way to put this: a police officer has almost no support from the citizens they're trying to protect, just because of the political nature of everything and the optics of around, all cops are bad and that kind of thing. They're usually, anything that they do wrong, the citizens they're trying to protect usually throw them under the bus. They have no support from management, and they have no support from their local politicians. They do anything wrong today, they're basically going to end up being thrown under the bus. They're going to lose their career. They're going to lose their pension. They might end up in jail. They're going to be prosecuted and that kind of thing. It just sucks. Look at how many bad situations that have happened that have gotten, or in the public eye, where cops just end up losing their jobs and going through the whole court system and winding up in jail. Right? The risk is real for them, and because of that, they're having a hard time recruiting other people, and at the same time, budgets are being cut. So you now have certain agencies in the country. I think it was somewhere in was it Philadelphia? There's one that I just heard that there's actually like no police services between like a 2 hour or 3 hour window every single night. That's essentially like the movie The Purge, saying this is it. There's going to be doesn't matter what happens. We're
yes.
not going to respond until 3 hours later. That's it. You're on your own for 3 hours. Doesn't matter what the emergency is. You're on your own for 3 hours because they just don't have the staff to put in there. There's other areas where there's even less funding for them, and there's maybe only one or two a handful of law enforcement officers that are in that particular agency or in that area, that they basically don't have enough people to cover every day of the week at all hours of the day. So some of them have decided that, yeah, we're just not patrolling on weekends. We have nobody to respond to calls on weekends. It'll have to wait till the following day or till the following Monday. That's happening. It's wild, but yeah,
It absolutely is.
it's a reality. And I think
Yes,
that
it is.
that's, to kind of get us here into wrap up mode. That to me, it's the reality of how ugly the world can be, how evil it can be. And these are the things that I want to protect myself and my family and my loved ones from, that I take self defense so seriously. Now, I think you and I are probably atypical in the sense that we live this and breathe this in and out every single day. It's a topic of conversation that we engage in every day. It's something we think about every day. It's something that we train for every single week and every opportunity that we have. I don't think the average person needs to do that. Uh, but I do wish that there was a better mechanism for us to make them aware of this is what reality really looks like. Wake up and get enough knowledge, skill with the right tools, and get your head right, so that if you are in that situation, you've turned all the odds in your favor to coming out of there healthy, alive, without serious injury, and you can go home without being stuck in the legal process. Um, the one thing that does give me hope is that there are, statistically speaking, if you look at defensive gun uses across the U.S., having a gun and the right attitude usually ends up being enough. I would say your odds could be much better if you take the steps to go get this additional training and to build yourself up into a more capable self-defender.
Absolutely. Yes, I think that's an incredible place to end on. I mean, ultimately putting the responsibility into the listener, but also instilling a sense of encouragement and also educating them
Yeah.
on what next steps to take. So I freaking loved this episode. So thank you so much.
One last thing I want to add real quick.
Oh my God, please.
One of the reasons that I probably am the instructor with the worst business model is that I want to make this as accessible as I can to everybody. So all of these things that I'm talking about, that I'm thinking about, I've put into, not everything. I'm still writing, so I still got a lot more thoughts, but I've got close to 500 blog posts. A good number of them are gear related, but at least half dive into these topics. And they're freely available. There is no subscription needed. All you got to do is go on the blog, search the topic, find the blog post, do some reading. The only thing the only cost that you have is your time to go and read those things. So I say that because I do realize that a lot of people just, especially right now with the way that the economy is getting the right tools and getting the right training takes some financial investments. And I understand that finances are sometimes a big obstacle for people. So get as much good information as you can for free. Go for it. Please do. Buy a book, read a book, $20, $25. That's start somewhere.
Absolutely. Even if that's not reading a full book, but starting with your blog posts, topic by topic, bite-sized pieces. Yep. Nowadays, some people just don't have the attention span, and this could be a good stepping stone if you're trying to get interested. He has topics all the way from should you carry a defensive pistol to the reality of a first handgun, all the way up to specific gear reviews. So just a lovely, lovely resource. And I am so excited for our future episodes. There are some exciting topics that we plan to discuss today, but I had the most technical issues I've ever had for today's episode. So that was super fun. But with that said, please, if you enjoyed this episode, stay tuned because we are going to do a part 2. And you never know, part 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever we have to do. So
42, that's the answer. Sorry, 42. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. I had to do it.
Absolutely. Yes, that's been coming up more recently. Are they doing like a sequel or something? Because people have been quoting them to me.
I don't know.
Quoting the movie. Okay. It's been a long time.
The book is much better. If you haven't read the book, you need to pick up the book.
I didn't know there was a book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. A resource you didn't know you were going to get today. So thank you so much for coming on today. This was so much fun, pre-show and during show. So
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for those listening that want to see highlights of this episode, you can go to She Shield Pod. Lisa Hamilton is the editor for all of those little shorts. She does an incredible job. So go check those out. We put some B-roll in there. So hopefully we can get some footage of Zoe shooting or teaching, whatever, throw some of that in there. And then we always like to spice it up with some random B-roll from the internet, non-copyright, of course. Anyway, all resources mentioned today, including how to train with Zoe to read his blog, are in the show notes for your convenience. If you like the podcast, you can severely help by liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. And if you or anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, look into holdmyguns.org. They are an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you. The link to access their website and to find a storage location partner is available in the show notes. Thank you for listening. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. Are you searching for a brand you can trust when it comes to shooting and gun care products? Look no further than Birchwood Casey. Since 1948, serious shooters, avid collectors, and professional gunsmiths have relied on Birchwood Casey. They've been in the game for over 70 years, providing us with products that have stood the test of time. From their legendary True Oil gunstock finish to the dependable Perma Blue, Birchwood Casey's commitment to quality is unmatched. Birchwood Casey has also revolutionized the way we train and improve our shooting skills with their innovative shoot and see targets. These targets let you see your shots instantly, making it easier than ever to track your progress and become a better marksman. Head over to birchwoodkc.com today and discover the products that have earned the trust of shooters worldwide. Use code SHESHIELD to save and to support the podcast. That's SHESHIELD at checkout.